Okay, well, good morning. Croeso I Gymru. Welcome to Wales. Welcome to Swansea. I am Debbie Ball, and I am the academic lead for business management, accounting, finance, and economics for the foundation level and for some of level 1. And with me this morning is Eric Darling. He is the academic team lead for business, accounting, finance and economics for the pre-masters. So those are the students who come here before they start their master's program. And he also shares level 1 with myself. When you come here to the college studying business, management, accounting, finance or economics, there are lots of different modules that you're going to be taking. Some of them are what we call skills modules. The interactive learning skills is a module to help you with writing reports, putting together presentations, and making sure that you reference your work and you avoid academic misconduct. Composition and style for some students helps them with writing essays. And we have a critical thinking module that, that expands your ideas when you're looking at topics. For example, thinking about the advantages, but also the disadvantages. We have a lot of different academic modules. For accounting, obviously we do accounting and finance. For business, we do accounting, finance, business modules, some economics. For pre-masters, you would also do marketing and managing people. For foundation students, we also look at something called globalization. So when Eric and I were thinking about putting a topic together for today, we had a vast array of topics that we could choose. So what were we going to do? Well, we thought that all students have to be motivated to come here to the college. If you're a foundation student, you're going to be here for 4 years. A level 1 student, first year undergrads, you're going to be here for 3 years. And at pre-masters, you're going to be here for about 2.5 years. So there must be something that's going to encourage you to stay here and to get those qualifications. Not only that, there is something that managers really want, and that is we want our workers to be motivated. Now, this is a managing people topic, and Eric is the lecturer for managing people. So I'm going to hand over to Eric. Take it away.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody's okay. Everybody's comfortable. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough today, so we may be interrupted by some of that. Okay, so as Debbie said, I lecture on the Managing People module. At the moment, I'm delivering that for first-year students. On other occasions, I deliver it for pre-master students, depending upon the timetable. So without moving on, or even with moving on, generally speaking, the topic of today is why are managers interested in motivation? So the agenda that we have for you is basically fivefold. I'll be introducing motivation as a topic. We'll then be having a look at what managers want. We'll have a look at satisfying needs, mostly about employees. The final one will be goal setting. And then at the end, a summary of what we've been speaking about. Okay, so without ado, what is motivation? Okay, so it comes from the word motive, and it considers what people need, what people desire, what people want, our urges to achieve something or to get something. And managers are very, very interested in what makes workers motivated. The reason for this would be that people do have a desire and a willingness to do something. Sometimes it's just out of a habit. Sometimes it's a routine that motivates people. And as you probably know, in certain jobs, certain businesses, routine is a very, very important factor. People have different needs, and these different needs give rise to them wanting to achieve things both in the short term and the long term. And some people just get motivated because they like doing something. Hobby, interest, sport, something like that. So it's good for managers to understand what motivation is and what makes different people motivated, what gets them to want to be in touch. Motivation can be loosely divided into two aspects. Motivation can be what's called extrinsic or intrinsic. Extrinsic motivation, it comes from the outside, doesn't come from within. So this would be something like taking part in an activity which is based on meeting somebody else's goal, if you like. Taking part in an activity at work that helps the company meet its objective, helps the department meet its objective. Extrinsic motivation can also be praise, approval. It makes you feel good because somebody thanks you or approves of what you're doing. It can be winning a competition, or managers also be very interested in the fact that extrinsic motivation is about receiving an award, receiving payment for doing something. When I ask students why they would work harder, a lot of them say, because I get more pay. Okay, but that doesn't work for everybody. The other form of motivation would be what's called intrinsic motivation. This comes from within, comes from here, comes from in there. And this is about taking part in something because you like taking part in it. It gives you satisfaction to take part. It could be fun, it could be a challenge, rather than because somebody else is pushing you to do it, you get a reward for doing it yourself. So having mentioned reward, let's have a look at these. Some rewards are what are called tangible rewards. You can touch them. You can physically touch them, although the last one, promotion, is a little bit different. You can't necessarily touch promotion, but it's categorized as a tangible reward. These are things like pay, receiving a voucher, maybe as an extra incentive, being taken out for dinner or for lunch, receiving a bonus, other benefits like having a company car, private health insurance, and also promotion is treated, as I said, as a tangible reward. Although can you touch promotion or not, I don't know, but it's maybe deemed like extra pay. Tap, tap, yeah. Intangible rewards, these are things we can't touch. Praise, thanks, being recognized publicly for your achievement. You know, standing in front of the workforce and your boss is saying, hey, well done, this worker has done exactly what we wanted them to do. Okay, an encouragement to pursue ideas. Many people get motivated because they are innovative people. They can invent new products or new ways of doing things, and they get motivated by being able to achieve this, and the encouragement from management to actually work in that area helps them to want to invent more things. And also there's personal development opportunity. I can give you a personal example of that. Some 25, 30 years ago, my boss asked me if I would be interested in doing a master's degree in management, and even bigger incentive, they paid for it and gave me time off work to do it. So it's personal development, but there can be smaller aspects, developing yourself for additional training, additional studies. Okay, so that's rewards. Okay, now we're going to talk about what managers want. So what actually makes managers so interested in motivation? What makes them interested in getting workers to work that little bit harder? Okay. Well, first things first, you need to understand what managers do. And managers plan and use resources to do what's called adding value. So in other words, in businesses take inputs like labor, like capital, raw materials, and they transform them into outputs. And then our outputs would normally be considered to be products, although there are other outputs, things like waste, reputation, but adding value to the product so that the final product is worth more than what it costs to put it together. Okay. Managers also want to produce orderly results and results which are expected according to the target. And this is measured in terms of a number of variables. Could be sales, more customers, bigger profits, gaining a larger market share, gaining a larger proportion of the market. And one of those resources that I mentioned earlier, I mentioned labor, or that is employees. Okay, so managers use employees as one of the resources to transform inputs into outputs. So management's problem then, if you like, is that adding value to these resources depends on what people do, depends on the activity of the workers. So they need to gain a commitment from workers so that they can act in a certain way towards achieving the desired result. In order to do this, managers need to understand what workers need in order for them to channel and sustain their behavior into creating the product, into achieving the goals of the organization. Okay, so what managers then need to do is to provide their workers, provide their employees with appropriate rewards which meet their needs and therefore motivate. So that's why managers are interested in it. Let's have a look at satisfying workers' needs next. And for the next few sessions, or a few slides, I'm going to be talking about various, should we say, experts who have researched into workers' needs, into motivation, and some of them are quite old. But what I'll do is I'll work through it in almost a chronological order, almost through time. It's a bit of a history lesson, if you like, but in order to get a handle on what's happening in business, you really need to have a bit of a handle on what's going on with history. So the first concept that we're going to look at is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, as you can see, this is quite old. You can tell by the photograph of Abraham Maslow there that this is not a modern concept. Maslow published his concept in 1943. And what he's basically saying is at the bottom of the pyramid, we as human beings have certain needs which are basic. We need to survive. We need food, we need water, warmth, shelter, clothing, drink. Oh, I've said water already. These are called physiological needs. So initially, when we go to work, that's the first need which we need to satisfy, a physiological need, the need to survive. And once we've established that area, once we've satisfied that need, we then want to protect it, which is where safety needs come in. So if you like, workers go to work, they're motivated for money so that they can pay to satisfy their physiological needs. And then secondly, they're motivated to keep their jobs so that they can continue surviving. But then once that is satisfied, as time goes on, Maslow indicates that people need a bit more than that from work in order to make them work harder, in order to keep them motivated. They need to have what are called belongingness and love needs. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch in today's system, but basically this is friendships and good relationships with the people that you work with. And then as your experience, as your service lengthens again, Maslow identified esteem needs. feeling prestige because you are in a senior position, you have experience, you've been there for a long time. We need to be respected as senior employees. And then the last one, the top of the pyramid, self-actualization. This is being the best we can be, being number one in the company, achieving to the highest level that you can achieve. And not everybody can achieve the same level as everybody else. This is self-actualization, being the best that you can achieve. For one short period in my career in financial services, I was number one in the UK. Unfortunately, there's only one direction when you're at the top, isn't there? After that, you're going to teaching. No, I didn't say that. You can edit that out, can't you, Kieran? Okay, so that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What I want you to look at next is McGregor's theory of X and theory Y. This came about in around about 1960. McGregor was thinking about different types of worker, and he looked at some workers which he categorized as his theory X, and other workers which he categorized as his theory Y. Now, I would like to stress that theory X and theory Y are both extremes on a spectrum. Okay, so at one extreme, you've got theory X, at the other extreme, you've got theory Y. Most people would be somewhere in the middle. There'll be very, very few workers who are completely theory X, very, very few workers who are completely theory Y. Most people come in the middle. But according to McGregor, theory X workers hate work, don't have any ambition, won't take on any responsibility. And theory Y workers are 100% self-motivated. They love work. And it's work that keeps them going. It's work that motivates them. Doing the job well. And what I'll do later is I'll link this into Maslow's theory. Okay, so McGregor then, theory X workers, they hate work, won't do it. Theory Y workers, they're self-motivated, they enjoy the challenge. Theory X workers need to be motivated by large amounts of money or punishment. This is where it works. It's a bit military type. So that's McGregor. We'll have a look at Frederick Taylor next. Frederick Taylor, as you can see, 1911. This is old. However, many firms still operate the theory that Frederick Taylor's scientific management evoked. This is what's called a mechanistic style of management. It's classical. Classical just means old, but it's mechanistic. The motivation is based on rewards, routine, and punishment. Okay, rewards, routine, and punishment. It came about after the Industrial Revolution in Europe and North America, whereby lots of factories had set up, manufacturing had grown out of all proportion, but nobody knew how to manage the factories. So in order to become competitive, factories tried to become more efficient, and they did that by dividing the jobs up so that one person had one job and the next person had the next job. Taylor's theories were incorporated by Ford Motor Company, and you probably know them as an assembly line. So assembly line work back in the 1920s and 30s usually followed Taylor's scientific management principle. So we've got division of work. One person does their job, passes the finished work to the next person who does their job, so on and so on and so on. And the result was at Ford, you'd end up with a car at the end of it, but everybody in the process had done some different work. Close supervision is a key to this. So your supervisor is basically watching you all of the time. And rewards were offered in a thing called piece rate pay. So in other words, if you received 10 cents for producing one item, you'd get 20 cents for producing 2, 30 cents, 40 cents, 50 cents, etc., etc. So the more you make, the more you get paid. So in other words, lazy people wouldn't get paid unless they were motivated to work that little bit harder. If they didn't work that little bit harder, they always had the supervisor to remind them that they weren't working quickly enough. So that's scientific management. This is around about the first theory of how to motivate and how to organize work. Frank and Lillian Gilbreth, they were fans of Taylor. They were quite happy that Taylor had set up this scientific management, invented the assembly line, if you like. But they felt that you could get even more out of workers than just having routine. So they started looking into the psychology of people, the psychology of workers. And what they came up with was the idea that if you actually told people that their work was important to the company, important to achieving the company objectives, and that they were valued, then they'd work just that little bit harder. And so Frank and Lillian Gilbreth, the results of their work led to higher intrinsic motivation. So that's coming from within, making people think from within. They got better pay, therefore better performance, and something called lower labour turnover. This is the rate at which people join a firm and leave a firm. So in a nutshell, people didn't resign as much. People stayed longer, gained experience, were able to work faster, move up that Maslow pyramid, if you like, have their security and then decide to move on to better things, to meet other needs. Another, she was a social worker really, but Mary Parker Follett had ideas along the same lines as the Gilbreths, that if you deal with the psychology of the worker rather than just having a routine, then you could get better outcomes. And Mary Follett worked out that if you included the employee in some of the decision making, and don't get me wrong, there's always a boss, there's always somebody who's running the show, but if you found out the opinions of the workers and gave them some responsibility for the results, then they would work harder again. They would be more motivated. And what you got here was better outcomes, not only better productivity, but also better quality. So in an assembly line, if something goes wrong, because of the speed it's moving, if there's a fault earlier in the line, then the whole product has a fault. But studies by Mary Parker Follett found that there were fewer faults. So more products were good quality with fewer returns. Okay. Carrying on from Mary Parker Follett, Elton Mayo, and he developed a concept called human relations approach. And he actually conducted experiments at a factory whereby he would do things like introduce a tea break or divide workers up into different teams. Thank you, Debs. Divide workers up into different teams. And you okay? Okay, you've just missed the circus. And divide workers up into different teams with different working conditions, different lighting levels, different temperatures maybe. But what he did beforehand, he told each team how important they were and then measured their performance and given different working conditions. And he found that in all cases, performance had improved. And the net result of his conclusion was that it was nothing to do with the working conditions. It was the fact that they'd been told that they were important people. Bit similar to the Gilbreth's work. Now the jury's still out on this. Okay, it's a concept which you might see as being useful, you might see as being appropriate, but many scholars feel that there are some holes in Mayo's research. And that's what we would like you to do when you do come to university, is not just to accept things, as you're told, but to maybe ask a few more questions than you would normally be considered doing. So that's Elton Mayo, human relations. We're moving up the scale now in time, and we're looking at Frederick Hertzberg. Now, as you can see, this is now after the Second World War. This is 1959. And Frederick Hertzberg was more considered in how to manage workers who are more theory Y than theory X. All of the concepts we've looked at so far, apart from Maslow, are considering workers on a production line, workers who are manufacturing, if you like. In service industry, this would be workers in a call center, as an example. But Frederick Hertzberg wanted to look more at professionals and see what motivated them. So he carried out his research with a group of accountants and engineers, approximately 200 in all. And after interviewing them, he deduced that there were two different categories of things that affected how they work. And he called these categories motivators and hygiene factors. Now, motivators are things which provided job satisfaction. And these are things like performance, achievement, being recognized for having done a good job, the actual status of the job. Personally, and I think Deb's is the same, I'm very proud of being a lecturer. Okay, that actually motivates me to be a lecturer, to be in higher education. People bow in the street. No, I'm joking. The halo's there, yeah. Things like being given responsibility motivated them, not having a supervisor checking on them every 5 seconds. Having opportunities for advancement, like the degree that I told you about earlier, master's degree, sorry. Personal growth in their work and the work itself. So these people are coming to work because of the work. They're not coming to work because the money doesn't actually motivate them to work any harder. If you think about it, an analogy you could look at, the assembly line workers need the money to pay for food, to pay their rent, perhaps. But these guys are coming to work, and if their pay doesn't work, if there's a problem with their pay, then that might affect what type of car they buy or what type of holiday they go on. This isn't life-threatening for them. These are professionals, well paid. So if I move across to dissatisfiers, this is nothing to do with motivation. This is a dissatisfier. And Hertzberg called them hygiene factors. So issues over salary, well, they weren't going to turn them into poor people overnight. So they're just irritating. The working conditions, we adapt ourselves. Debs and I have done it this morning. We adapt ourselves to the working conditions and still get the job done to the highest standard that we can. And that includes the physical workspace of this tiny coffin that we're sitting in now. Our relationship with our colleagues, arguing with colleagues and managers, because we still have managers. So we won't call them arguments then, shall we call them disagreements? They lead to a bad day. They don't lead to something that stops you being motivated to do your job. Both of us will still be at 9 o'clock lecturing with the same enthusiasm that we would normally have if we were having a good day. Okay, quality of management, it's irritating. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to do a good job. And good old rules and regulations, somebody hiding behind rules and regulations to make you do something in a way that is not necessarily the best way to do it. But that's the rule. Okay, so Hertzberg deduced these things from his interviews with professional people. So we've got motivators on the one side, job satisfaction, motivation, reach the heady heights of self-actualization, and we've got a bad day at work. The hygiene factors, or a bad couple of days at work. They don't stop you being motivated to do the job because you love it. Okay. So looking at motivators and hygiene factors, motivators tend to be intangible. So we're linking back now to the beginning of the presentation when we looked at the types of motivation. Motivators are intangible rewards, praise, doing a good job. Intrinsic motivation then is coming from in. You're doing it because you like doing it, because you want to do it. Students that come to university that have intrinsic motivation, they come because they want to do it, because they want to learn, and they want to learn properly, do it better. Students that come to university because they think, oh, I've paid my money, I'm going to get a degree, get a nasty shock. Hygiene factors then, these are where tangible rewards, these aren't motivating, the tangible rewards, but because the pay is not the issue, for instance. So messing around with the pay is irritating. Paying me more doesn't motivate. Forms of extrinsic motivation like punishment, like offering a bonus, they don't work. But they can cause dissatisfaction, not usually demotivation. Over the longer term, if it carries on, they can be demotivating. If the problem's not resolved, they can be demotivating. But usually it's just irritation, dissatisfaction. Okay, so that's Frederick Herzberg. Let's have a look at how these things that we've talked about fit in with Maslow then. Okay, so we're coming back full circle, we're coming back to needs. So let's say Theory X workers, their needs are more based around living, securing their living, their physiological needs, safety. This is where scientific management is perhaps a better motivator. Punishment, cash reward, piece rate, more you do, the more you get. At the top of the pyramid, Theory Y, this is more Herzberg's motivators. Motivators there are linked to self-fulfillment, linked to esteem, feeling good about yourself, feeling good about what you're doing, being the best. You can also link Maslow with Frederick Herzberg. The hygiene factors then are at the bottom. These are the physiological and safety needs. With professional people who are very, very important to the company, whilst they're not immortal, companies think twice about moving these people on. They would have to be a real disruptor. Now, these are valuable people that have been around for a long time. They're hard to train. They're also expensive to recruit new ones. At the top then, the motivators. Once again, it links to self-fulfillment, links to esteem needs. Okay. So we've done that. Let's just have a little look about ways to keep employees motivated, and we're going to look at goal setting. Okay. Goal setting was a concept devised by Edwin Locke back in 1968. You could probably notice we're out of the black and white photographs now and we're into the colour pictures. So we're getting closer to modernity. I was around in 68. You guys probably still think of that as ancient history. I think even Kieran thinks of 68 as ancient history. 2 years after winning the World Cup. Okay. Edwin Locke deduced that the way you set an objective, the way you set a goal affects motivation. Okay. And a lot of this is based on what we've already spoken about. So basically, if you give somebody a challenging goal, that is motivational. A challenging goal motivates. An impossible goal does not. So if you give somebody a target which is completely impossible to achieve, it's not good. It's not good motivation. And as managers, you need the workers on your side. So yeah, by all means, make the target challenging, keep them busy, but you do not need to give somebody a target that they cannot achieve. That's not even good if you want to sack somebody, because in a tribunal, they'll just say, well, look, he gave me a target that was impossible. Goals also need to be specific. People need to know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, and you'll notice this when you come to university and you look at the assignments that you set. Okay, if the assignment is clear, precise, and tells you exactly what it is you need to be doing, then it is far more motivating than having one where you're not quite sure. Okay, and even though assignments can be clear and specific to the teachers, we've all got English as a first language. You guys might need a little bit of help with that. Oh, sorry, someone's got Welsh as a first language. Okay, so it's a good idea, something we've already touched on with Gilbreth, something we've touched on with Mary Parker Follett. Employees and managers getting together and discussing the goals. So employees participating in goal setting, that can lead to ownership and therefore motivation. Because if you and I sit down together and we talk about your target and you're involved in that discussion, it then becomes your target that you've agreed to. It's not been imposed upon you. And because it's your target, you're hopefully more motivated to go out and do the job and achieve the goal. And it's also, just going full circle, really important that as an employee, you know the result. As a student, you'll want to know the feedback from your essay or your report or your presentation or your exam. Some of you will just want to know the grade, and that's motivation enough. Most of you, I would hope, would not want to know why you achieved that grade, what you can do in the future to get a better grade. Okay, so that's Edwin Locke. Okay, it's a tongue twister, this one. Victor Broom. 1906 again, yet another colour photograph of an old man with no hair. And Victor Broom's theory, expectancy theory it was called, works around what workers expect. Okay, so we've talked about setting the goals, setting the objectives. Well, what do workers expect? They expect that the task is to be achievable. They expect that for them to put their effort into it, they've got to have the right skills, the right resources, and the right support. If you haven't got those things, can't necessarily achieve the objective. So I usually use the analogy is I'm quite large, as people will say. If you asked me to run around the campus in 2 minutes, that's a non-starter. Running around the campus full stop is a non-starter. Walking around the campus is a challenge. So it's just not going to happen. But if you, with the right training, with the right preparation, and with the right support, it could be achievable in the future. Okay. Employees also expect that if they complete the task successfully, there will be a reward. The trick is for managers is to know what that reward is supposed to be, what the best reward would be. And as we've already looked at with Hertzberg, the reward should meet the needs of the employee. So if your need is a pat on the back, or your need is to stand up in front of the company and be praised and be in a league table that says this person is number one in the company, then that's correct. If you don't need the money, then money's no longer a motivator. So offering me 50, 60 pounds, or offering Debbie 50, 60 pounds for an hour's work or an hour's teaching that takes 2.5 hours to create is not necessarily a motivator. But if you don't offer us that 50 pounds, it's a dissatisfier. Okay, so rewards need to meet employees. So that's Vroom's expectancy theory, what workers expect. So you set the right sort of objectives and you provide make sure they've got the capability and the support and the resources to complete the task, but the reward that you're offering is the right sort of reward. One which will actually, as they say where I come from, float their boat. So one that motivates them, makes them interested, makes them want to achieve the task. Okay. So it's gone a bit quicker than I thought. So to summarize then, at the beginning, we had a look at motivation, what it is. We looked at intrinsic motivation, extrinsic. We looked at different types of rewards, tangible, intangible rewards. We basically looked at the fact that managers need to manage their resources in order to achieve a goal. And without the support of their staff, they're not going to achieve that goal. We then looked at needs, what people need. We looked at two extremes of profession. We looked at maybe manufacturing workers. We looked at professionals, managers and accountants, and what was the other one? We looked at engineers. And we looked at the type of needs that they have. And then we looked at setting goals. We looked at expectancy from workers. And when you become managers, these are things that you're going to consider. But one thing for me, if you haven't got your workforce on side, you're not going to be successful as a manager. And there are lots of other things that you need to know as well. So I make it 1:45. Have we got time for questions, Kieran, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much, Eric, and Debbie, of course. Hopefully you guys who are watching have had a bit of an insight into what it would be like to study management with us at the college, Swansea University. I think it was a really good choice of topic, again, as you said, to cover all ground with all the different students who will be at different levels and studying different programs. So yeah, of course, if anybody does have any questions, there have been some coming in throughout this presentation that I've been answering in the chat. But if anybody does have any questions specifically for the academics that we have on board today, now is your chance to ask them. So you've got the chat function and the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens there, which you can make use of if you want to. I think something that maybe some people might be out there might be interested in, but maybe not wanted to ask a question about is what kind of assessments they can expect in a management module or this module or whatever.
Okay, so that's been handed back to me. There are various assessments. There's a full array of assessments from writing individual essays to working in teams and groups. We do group work specifically because employers have asked. Yes, they want employees who know how to work in a team. So we do group work, we do exams, we do what we call tests. Some of those tests are with multiple choice questions. Some of them are hands-on, especially in accounting, economic, finance, the statistics, the numerical topics that you will be studying. We tend to have hands-on tests. In accounting at level 1, we actually do a podcast. So students choose an accounting topic and they have to record a podcast. We also have end of semester examinations. We get business plans in business. At foundation level. There's a full array of assessments. So it's not just the same assessment in every module. Every module is geared up with a specific assessment that suits that topic area. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's grand. That's exactly what we were looking for. So one question.
If I can just butt in for a second, we do let students know what the assessment is by at least week 3. By week 3 of this semester, you know what your assessment is going to be. So if it's an essay or a report, you know quite early on, and then that work doesn't usually have to be in till towards the end of the semester. So on average, I'd say we give the students at least 8 weeks to be working on a piece of work. Yes, so there is plenty of time to do it, so long as students get started right at the very beginning. Sorry, Kieran.
That's quite right. Yeah, absolutely. Time management is a really important part of being a student, and to putting that work in revise and to prep. Presentation, for example, is a really important part of being successful as a student. So,
as I said at the beginning,
no, you go ahead.
We got some of those key skills, like the interactive learning skills, composition and style, critical thinking. Those modules are there to help you with your assessments. So sometimes students think, oh, I don't have to go to that. I don't need that. But really, those modules are the ones that are going to help you get those really great marks in the academic modules. So those are the ones that you do need to go to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple of questions related to the subject matter, related to businessy stuff, which I'll leave to you guys. So the first one, in regards to goal setting that you discussed, Eric, one of the students is asking, if you say that challenging goals motivate people, please can you explain how? Because if goals are challenging, that means they're difficult to achieve. How does that then motivate people?
Yeah. Okay, that basically fits with theory Y, in that if you've achieved something which is challenging, you get more job satisfaction from it. With things like production line, with theory X, the organization will invariably have a series of objectives like profit, gaining customers, produce how many units to produce, and they're just fixed. So that's a case of making sure you've employed people who are prepared to, or you develop people who are prepared to work at a level within the routines which are going to actually achieve the corporation's goal, the organization's goal. But this is what is it? If it's is it Homer Simpson? If it's hard, it's not worth doing. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I'm the other way around. If it's challenging, that makes it interesting. That makes it worth doing. That makes it pushing myself to be able to achieve something better than I've got already. So I hope that answers your question. But that's what it's all about. Theory Y people, they need to be pushed, or they need to be able to push themselves to achieve something. And bear in mind, with the job characteristic and the job design, these people get to negotiate what the target is. It's not an imposition. So yeah, you know your limits, but it's always good to stretch those a little bit further.
Grand, thank you very much.
Hope that makes sense.
And then another one from another student Sunday asking, it's interesting presentation. My question is, what is the best way to measure employee performance to ensure that you give a fair assessment of that employee?
That's
a really good question, because there are infinite ways of doing it. Absolutely. Many organizations are target orientated. So your performance is measured against achieving a target. And obviously with an almost infinite amount of industries, then those targets can be different depending on the industry. We don't have a target as such for the number of students that pass or the number of students that fail.
We don't get a bonus when you pass.
We don't get a bonus when you pass either, no. But what we do have is a series of measures to see how things are going. So at some time in the next week or so, Deb and I will be observing colleagues to make sure that their performance, shall we say, is up to scratch, looking for development needs, discussing that with the colleague and agreeing on a course of action for improvement, or there may be no need for improvement. It may be as that new lecturers are observed by managers, not by colleagues. So we call it peer assessment for us. And then you guys get a say as well. We have an end of every module. When it ends, there is a student, what's the word?
Review. A
student review form, which you complete, and you basically tell us what you think of our teaching style, our teaching quality, what you think of the course, and those are taken seriously. So we actually sit down and we look at those, and and try. We can't make it better for you, but we can make it better for the next people that come along. Those are two ways. There's probably half a dozen others.
Profit is usually the big one in business.
But we're here to make a profit, yeah. So the organisation as a whole will look at profitability, but that isn't always down to the individual teachers. Yeah, it's a factor because you come here to get educated, and if you don't get on with your teacher or your teacher's style, then that may be a dissatisfier for you, a hygiene factor.
And so hopefully that has answered that question. If you want to know about more ways to measure an employee's performance, then come and study management with us at the college. I'm sure that you'll discover more throughout the duration of your studies. So the questions look like they have stopped coming in, so I think we will call it a day there, and I'll give you all back 5 minutes. You are welcome. Thank you very much to everybody who is watching this event live and for all those wonderful questions. Thank you to everybody who's watching the recording. Don't feel like you're missing out on getting to ask questions. If you do have any, give us a message on social media, drop us an email, message us on live chat. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you most importantly to Eric and Debbie. Always great to have academics on board for these kind of events. I'm sure that lots of our students out there will be very grateful to have met you, and hopefully they'll be meeting you in person in the next few intakes.
Oh, lovely.
Cheers.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Yes. Bye, everybody.
Grand. Thank you very much, everybody.
And as many of you as we can.
Exactly.
When you get here.
Don't forget now, we've got more Taster Month events going on throughout this month. So on Friday, we have a live Q&A with the fabulous academic and student experience team. We've got more academic taster sessions taking place over the next 2 weeks and more live webinars as well. So we look forward to seeing you then. So have a wonderful rest of day, everybody, and we hope to see and hear from you very, very soon.
Bye now.
Bye.